Chicago, city of broad shoulders, bright lights, and shadows deep enough to swallow a man whole. You've heard the stories, haven't you? Whispers and rumors. But what happens when they crawl out of the dark and stand right in front of you? These reports have been rewritten and the truth's buried. Because in Chicago, it's not what you see that should scare you. It's what they don't want you to see. Welcome to Weird Encounters, a place where the ordinary fades into shadow and the unexplainable comes alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and become part of our ever-growing community of the curious. Two cops walked into an abandoned Chicago meatpacking plant, but only one came out willing to tell the truth. What was inside, and why are federal agents covering it up? I've been carrying this on my chest for months now. Writing it out might be the only way to get it out of my head. All I know is if anything happens to me after sending this, at least it won't disappear with me. Just call me Officer Dan, 27, born and raised in Chicago. I've been on the force 5 years. I thought I knew what I signed up for. Bad neighborhoods, drug busts, gangs, the usual. But what happened in that abandoned Fulton meatpacking plant this spring? That wasn't in the manual. And worse, the people I trusted most, the people I thought were supposed to have my back, well, they showed me just how deep the rot goes. It was March 3rd, just after midnight, when we got the call. Disturbance at the old plant. Screams heard, lights seen inside. Everyone knew the place was condemned, but somehow it always drew trouble. I was riding with Sergeant Frank Delaney, the guy every rookie said you wanted on your side. He had 35 years on the job and was supposed to be retiring at the end of the month. Only by then, I'd started noticing things. He'd make stops he didn't log. I caught him slipping envelopes into his coat from men who didn't look like the usual neighborhood types. Suits, sunglasses at night, quiet cars that never seemed to carry plates. When I asked him once about it, he told me to mind my own business. You want to last in this city, kid, you learn when to look the other way. That night, as we pulled up to the plant, I caught sight of one of those men again. Parked across the street in a black sedan, window cracked just enough for a pale hand to pass something folded into Delaney's palm. I asked him point blank, "What's going on with that guy? Who is he?" Delaney just pocketed the cash, glanced at me and said, "You'll understand soon enough." Then he got out of the car like nothing had happened. The plant loomed ahead, dead and rotting, its broken windows glowing with faint light inside. The chain-link fence sagged in the cold wind. We found blood on the pavement by the loading dock, thick and fresh, dragging toward a pried open door. No homeless fight or gang scrap. This was different. We went inside. The smell hit immediately, copper and rot, layered with something sharp that burned the back of my throat. Our light skimmed across rusted hooks and dangling chains, the ghost of what the place used to be. Only now it wasn't empty. A torn jacket sleeve on a hook. Gouges clawed into the tile, deep enough to crack stone. A pile of bones stacked in a corner like someone had arranged them. I felt sick. "This isn't normal," I said. Delaney didn't answer. He just kept walking, like he'd seen it all before. That's when we found the badge. Bent, blood-stained, decades old. I looked up the number later. It belonged to an officer who vanished in 1987. No body ever recovered. I looked at Delaney, waiting for him to show shock. Instead, he stared at it with dead eyes and muttered, "Should have stayed retired." We pressed deeper, though my gut screamed to turn back. I could feel eyes on us. Every shadow felt thicker than it should. Then, on the catwalk above, I saw it. A shape too big, limbs too long, crouched low. My light caught its eyes, flat, reflective, dead. It dropped before I could call out. It landed with a wet thud, stood up, and I saw what no one will ever believe. Pale, stretched skin. A mouth too wide, teeth jagged, arms ending in claws. I fired. Delaney fired. The thing didn't fall. It just growled, the sound vibrating in my chest, and charged. We barely made it behind an overturned cart. Delaney pumped his shotgun and blasted it point blank. It staggered, then scrambled up the wall like a spider, vanishing into the rafters. Silence. Just our ragged breathing. We should have left, but Delaney insisted we keep going. "Orders," he said. "We're not done yet." Orders. That word stuck in my head. Who was giving him orders? We moved into the cold storage wing, and the door slammed shut behind us. Locked from outside. We were trapped. The creature circled us, slamming against freezer doors, scraping claws on steel. Then it lunged. I shot it in the throat, black fluid splattering my face. It screamed, a tearing metallic wail, and retreated. Delaney forced the door, and we ran. The thing chased us through the corridors, claws raking walls. We made it to the roof. Chicago's skyline glowed in the distance. For a second, I thought we'd escaped. But it burst through after us, slow, deliberate, silhouetted against the city lights. We unloaded everything we had. Delaney shot a rusted beam, and the roof partially collapsed under the creature's weight. It fell into the plant with a crash. We stumbled down, expecting backup. The SWAT team finally arrived, but by the time they swept the place, everything was gone. No bones, no blood, no claw marks, not even the badge, just dust and debris. That's when the black sedans pulled up. Not CPD. Men in plain suits, heavy coats. One flashed a badge so fast I barely caught it, but I saw the letters. CIA. They pulled Delaney aside. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. Control the narrative. Compartmentalize. The boy's expendable. When Delaney came back, his face was blank. He told me straight, "You're writing the report. You say there was nothing there. A false alarm. If you don't, you'll be off the force by morning." Delaney grabbed my shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Kid, this city's been living with things you'll never understand. You think this was the first time? Hell no. It's been happening for decades. We keep people safe by keeping them ignorant. You want a career? You play along." Later, when I turned in the report, a federal agent I'd never seen before was waiting at my desk. He smiled, but it was the coldest smile I've ever seen. "We'll take it from here, officer. Thank you for your cooperation." Then he walked off with my notes. The official report now reads, "Noise complaint investigated. No subjects located. But I know the truth. And I know Delaney was paid off to look the other way. Whatever was in that plant wasn't the first, won't be the last, and the highest levels don't want anyone to know." This story comes right out of the Windy City itself. But forget the shiny skyline and hot dogs on the corner. Our story takes you beneath the streets of Chicago, into the tunnels where the water runs dark and something else runs darker. A story about two city workers who found more than rusty pipes. So grab your hard hat and don't lose your head. I don't usually write things like this, but I don't know where else to put it. Maybe if you read this, you'll believe me, because no one else has. My name is David Russo. I'm 52 years old, born and raised in Chicago, still live on the South Side. I work for the city as a maintenance supervisor with the Department of Water Management. I've been down in the tunnels, the pumping stations, the storm drains, the whole underground mess most people don't even know exists. I've been doing this for more than 20 years. I've seen rats the size of cats. I've seen bodies. I've seen chemicals dumped where they shouldn't be. Nothing ever rattled me the way this did. This happened back in February of this year, during one of those stretches where the cold makes the pipes freeze and we're running call after call. My partner on the shift was a guy named Luis Martinez, younger than me, maybe late 30s. Solid worker, but jumpy. He hated the underground stuff, said he always felt watched down there. The call came in from a block off Canal Street near an old warehouse row. Pressure was dropping in a feeder line. It wasn't a big job, just supposed to be a valve check and maybe patch some corrosion. We parked the truck in the alley, unlocked the iron hatch, and climbed down into the dark. The smell was the usual mix of mildew, stagnant water, and rust. But the air felt heavier than normal, like it carried something extra. We set up lights. You don't go down there without plenty of them. Our job was to follow the feeder to a junction room under the street. Luis was grumbling the whole way. He stopped when we passed a wall where someone had sprayed weird markings. Not gang tags. These were circular, with straight lines cutting through. Like someone tried to draw diagrams but didn't know geometry. I told him to ignore it. We'd seen homeless people and weird graffiti before. But the deeper we went, the fresher the markings looked. Some were done in red paint that hadn't fully dried, even though no one should have been able to get down there without us knowing. At the junction, things got worse. The valve cover was off. Someone had removed it, but no tools were around. The bolts were neatly lined up on the floor. I swear to you, Luis and I just stared at it. There's no way someone broke into this tunnel, unscrewed that cover by hand, and left it sitting there. Luis wanted to call it in, but the line was still dropping pressure. That meant water was going somewhere. We had to check the next section. We moved deeper, flashlights catching wet walls, the shine of rat eyes, nothing unusual. Until we found the blood. It wasn't a pool. It was streaks across the concrete, like something had been dragged. Whatever left it had claws, because the scrapes in the floor were deep and wide. Luis froze. He kept whispering that we should leave. I told him just a little further. We needed to at least see where it went. The trail led us to a steel service door. It should have been locked with a city seal. The lock was smashed, bent backward like it had been pulled from the inside. I didn't want to go in, but Luis was already pulling the door open. Inside was a chamber bigger than it had any right to be. Brick walls, arched ceiling, like an old storage cavern. Piles of debris everywhere. Broken furniture, crates, old drums. And in the center was something that stopped us cold. It looked like an altar. A square block of stone with more of those circular markings smeared across it, this time in what I swear was blood. And then we heard it. Not footsteps, not breathing. A low scraping sound, like something dragging itself along the wall. We swung our lights, and that's when we saw it. I don't know what to call it. Best I can do is reptilian humanoid. 8 feet tall, hunched, its skin a mottled green and gray like old concrete and scales mixed together. Its eyes reflected the light bright yellow, like a gator. Its mouth was too wide, lined with sharp teeth, and when it opened, a hiss came out that rattled in my chest. Luis dropped the light. The beam spun across the floor, and in that second, the thing moved. It didn't walk. It lunged low, its claws screeching against the brick. We barely slammed the door before it hit. The impact bent the steel inward. We ran. The tunnels became a maze. The thing was behind us, its claws hammering against the walls. Every time we stopped, it stopped. Every time we moved, it moved. Like it was toying with us. At one point, we reached a ladder up to a secondary hatch. Luis climbed first. Halfway up, the rung snapped under him. He crashed to the floor, his leg twisted. I pulled him up, but the noise drew it closer. I saw its shadow stretching at the corner before I dragged him into another tunnel. We were trapped. No radio signal, no way back the way we came. The air was getting hotter, the smell turning sour, like sulfur mixed with mold. I don't remember every turn, but I remember the moment we reached a maintenance shaft where water was flooding in. It was waist-deep, freezing cold, but it was our only way forward. I half-carried Luis through it, the water dragging us down. Behind us, it came into the shaft. Its bulk filled the space, the water rising around its body. The eyes stayed locked on me the entire time. I thought we were done. Then luck hit us. A pressure surge burst one of the feeder pipes overhead, blasting water like a cannon. It knocked the thing back, slammed it into the wall. We got out. We climbed another ladder, came up under the alley. Luis was taken to the hospital with a broken leg and hypothermia. He won't talk about it. Says he remembers nothing past falling off the ladder. I tried to report it, but my supervisor told me to stop. He said those tunnels weren't even on the maps anymore. He told me the less I asked, the better. But I know what I saw, and I think there's more of them. The markings, the altar, the pipes being tampered with. It wasn't random. There is something not human in the tunnels of Chicago. In Chicago, one of the city's oldest hotels hides stories most people dismiss as legends. But one maintenance man swears what he saw, there wasn't legend at all. Children who never left, and a night he barely survived. My name is Thomas Kearns. I'm 54 years old, born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I spent most of my working life as an electrician, bouncing between union jobs until I landed steady work doing maintenance at hotels downtown. I don't scare easy. I've worked nights in half-lit basements and old boiler rooms where rats outnumber people. But what I lived through in the Congress Plaza Hotel last winter, it still keeps me up at night. For anyone who doesn't know, the Congress Plaza is one of the oldest hotels in the city. Built back in 1893, tied to the World's Fair. A lot of stories hang around that place. Some say mobsters used it as a hideout. Some say Al Capone ran operations there. Others claim soldiers passing through during the wars stayed and never left. I never cared much about those stories. I figured they were just tales for tourists, until I was assigned to the 12th floor. It was January. Bitter cold, the kind where your breath freezes on your mustache before you can wipe it away. I was covering a night shift because the regular guy called out sick. The job was simple. Check reports of electrical issues in several unused rooms on the 12th. Those rooms had been sealed for years, used for storage. The other maintenance guy, Eddie Morales, came with me. He's younger, mid-40s, good worker, but tends to talk too much when he's nervous. We rode the service elevator up around midnight. The 12th floor hallway was freezing, colder than the rest of the building. The heat barely reached there. Our breath hung in the air. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Hotels always have noise, pumps, vents, people moving, doors shutting. But up there, it was dead still, like the building was holding its breath. We opened the first locked room on the list. It was stripped bare except for old wallpaper peeling off the walls. The power should have been dead, but a single lamp in the corner was glowing faint yellow. No bulb inside, just light. Eddie swore under his breath. I unplugged the cord, but the glow stayed. When I touched the lamp, the glass was ice cold. We left that room fast. The next room had furniture covered in sheets, dust thick enough to choke you. On the bed sat a leather suitcase, newer than the rest of the junk, maybe from the 70s. Eddie opened it. Inside were photographs, black and white headshots of men and women, some smiling, some staring blank. Every photo had the eyes scratched out with a blade. We didn't talk much after that. At the end of the hall was the big room, one the staff always whispered about. They said it was where a mother once threw her children out the window before jumping herself. They said security guards heard crying in there at night. The door was swollen with age, but we got it open. The room was wide, with tall windows facing Michigan Avenue. The glass was fogged, but you could see headlights moving below. In the middle of the floor was a circle drawn in white chalk. Inside it lay dozens of old hotel keys, scattered like bones. That's when the temperature dropped even further. I could see frost crawling across the wallpaper. And then we heard it. Children laughing. Not outside. Not in the hall. In the room with us. Eddie's light swung across the walls, but nothing was there. The laughter grew louder, circling us until it turned into screams. The windows slammed open on their own, wind blasting in. One of the old keys lifted off the floor, spinning in the air. Then another. Soon the whole circle of them was whirling like a storm. I grabbed Eddie, told him we had to leave, but he was frozen, staring at the far corner. I turned and saw them. Children. 3 of them. Pale, eyes dark, faces blank. Standing side by side, just watching us. When I stepped forward, they opened their mouths at the same time. The sound that came out wasn't human. It was a deep, guttural roar that shook the windows. We ran for the door, but it slammed shut in our faces. I yanked and shoved, but it wouldn't move. Behind us, the children stepped closer. Their feet didn't touch the floor. Eddie screamed that one of them was reaching for him. I looked, and sure enough, its hand stretched out, long fingers curling like claws. The air smelled sharp, like burned metal. That was the trap. We were locked in with them, and I thought we'd die there. I remembered my father once telling me about old Catholic tricks against evil. Cross yourself, call out prayers. I shouted the Lord's Prayer as loud as I could. For a moment, everything stopped. The kids froze. The keys dropped from the air with a clatter. That pause was enough. The door flung open behind us, and we bolted into the hall. We didn't stop until we reached the service elevator. When the doors closed, Eddie was shaking so bad he couldn't hold his flashlight. Back in the lobby, we told the night manager what happened. He just looked at us cold and said, "You weren't supposed to go in that room." Then he walked away. The next day, my supervisor reassigned me. No more 12th floor. Eddie quit a week later. I don't know what those things were, ghosts, demons, something worse, but they're still up there, waiting. And the scariest part? The hotel still rents rooms on that floor to tourists. In the swamps of southern Illinois, a ranger claims he saw something he was ordered never to speak of. A patrol gone wrong, voices that weren't real, and a creature walking on 2 legs that left more questions than answers. I think it's something the government doesn't want us to know about. Thank you for letting me submit my encounter. This is so strange, but here's my story. My name is Daniel Kearns, born in Illinois, and I live in Marion now. I spent most of my adult life as a park ranger in southern Illinois, working in the Cache River State Natural Area. It's a strange place, swamp and cypress, water that seems endless in places, trees older than our country. I've worked through storms, fires, drownings, and rescues, but nothing like what happened one night in late October 3 years ago. I was partnered with a younger ranger named Chris Barlow, 29 years old, on patrol. He was still getting his bearings in this part of the state. He liked to joke, talk too much, but he had good instincts. That night, we were sent into a sector not many people visit. Locals call it Eagle Pond, though it's more of a flooded basin. Tall cypress knees stick up like spikes, mud everywhere. The complaint was about loud animal noises and something dragging deer carcasses. Farmers nearby had been missing goats. Headquarters told us to sweep the area, check for poachers, and log anything unusual. The swamp was already half flooded when we set out. We used a flat-bottom boat with a small outboard, gliding down channels so narrow the branches scratched our jackets. It was dead quiet. No frogs, no owls, no crickets, just the hum of the motor. The first sign was on a sandbar. We stopped when my light caught something pale. A rib cage, not stripped clean, torn open. Blood still dark and wet. A white-tailed deer, but gutted in a way I've never seen. The organs were missing, but the legs were untouched. The head was twisted halfway around. Chris gagged and said a coyote or bobcat, maybe. I shook my head. No predator wastes meat like that. We moved deeper. That's when the feeling set in, the sense of being tracked. The hair on my arm stood up. I swung my beam across the trees. At first I thought I saw eyes, high up between the branches, but they blinked out before I could focus. We pulled the boat up onto a muddy bank to check a half-collapsed hunting blind. Old boards, nails rusted. Inside were shredded pieces of camo fabric, torn in strips, and drag marks leading down toward the water. Whatever made them had claws. You could see the grooves. Chris whispered, "Do you hear that?" At first I didn't. Then I did, breathing. Heavy, slow, wet. It came from just beyond the blind. We drew sidearms and backed toward the boat. The breathing stopped. Then a splash, as if something massive had stepped into the channel. We waited, lights trained on the water. Nothing. Then we heard voices, not ours. A man calling faintly, "Help me." A woman crying out, "Over here." Clear as day. Chris yelled back, "Ranger service, stay where you are." We pushed off the bank, motored toward the sound. But there was nobody. The channel opened into a black pool. Our lights cut across water and trees, but no people. Only floating pieces of clothing, jeans, shirt, ripped and soaked. No bodies. Chris looked at me, terrified. The voices came again, behind us now, echoing. "Help me." Then silence. The engine coughed and died. Wouldn't restart. I yanked the cord until my arm ached. Dead. We were drifting in the middle of that black pool, fog creeping low. The smell came next. Coppery, like fresh blood mixed with wet dog. Something moved on shore. Branches cracked. Then it stepped out. It was on 2 legs. 7, maybe 8 feet tall. Shoulders massive, chest broad. Covered in dark matted hair slick with swamp water. The head was canine, a wolf or German shepherd but twisted, longer muzzle, teeth bared, ears upright. Its eyes burned amber in the beam of my light. Not reflection, not animal shine, real light, glowing from inside. It stood still, staring at us, then dropped to all fours and ran along the bank with terrifying speed, keeping pace with our drifting boat. Every few seconds it stopped, rose up again, and stared, drool hanging from its teeth. Chris fired 2 shots. The thing ducked, vanished into brush, then reappeared 30 yards ahead. The bullets did nothing. The boat drifted into a tangle of cypress knees. We tried pushing off, but the mud sucked us tight. That's when it came closer. The water rippled. Something massive waded in, just out of view. I could hear claws raking against the cypress roots. Chris slipped, nearly fell overboard. I grabbed him. Then we both froze. A clawed hand, long fingers ending in black nails, rose out of the water and pressed against the side of the boat, rocking it. I shoved off with an oar, hard. The hand slid away. We shot forward, bumping through the knees until the channel widened again. That's when it howled. A sound that shook my skull. Half wolf, half man, echoing across the basin. We rowed as fast as we could, no motor, just oars. But the thing followed along the shore, sometimes vanishing, then reappearing closer. Once, it leapt a gap and landed in the mud with such force the ground shook. It wanted us to know how strong it was. We reached a levee trail and abandoned the boat, scrambling up the embankment. The trail was narrow, swamp on both sides. The fog thickened until we could barely see 10 feet. Behind us, wet footsteps slapped the mud. Fast. Gaining. Then, silence. I held my breath. Chris aimed into the fog, shaking. From the mist, a shape rose. Not just one, 2 more. Smaller, hunched, but same canine faces, same glowing eyes. A pack. They stood shoulder to shoulder on the trail, blocking it. We backed away, firing blindly. They didn't charge. They just advanced slowly, forcing us back toward the swamp. When Chris's foot slipped on mud, one lunged, snapping its jaws inches from his arm. I dragged him up and we sprinted down a side path I barely remembered. That path ended at a service shack on stilts, storage for fuel cans and tools. We bolted inside, slammed the door, barred it. The wood walls shuddered as something slammed against them from outside. Another impact, harder. Nails screeched down the siding. Then silence again. For 2 hours we sat there, guns drawn, barely breathing. Occasionally we heard them outside, padding through the mud, circling, sometimes scratching at the walls. Once something climbed onto the roof. The boards above groaned under the weight. I thought it would cave in. Just before dawn, headlights cut through the fog. Black SUVs, federal plates, men in tactical gear with no insignia. They swept the area fast, weapons drawn, like they knew exactly what was here. The howls stopped. The footsteps vanished. We were escorted out without a word. At headquarters, we were separated and questioned by men who weren't from the state. They asked about the eyes, the hands, the pack. They already knew. When I asked what they were, the lead agent leaned close and said, "You saw large feral dogs. That's your statement." Then he slid a paper across the desk. Chris refused at first. They threatened him with disciplinary action, said he'd lose his job. He signed. I signed. We were ordered never to discuss it. The official report says, wild dog activity, no threat to public safety. Chris quit within weeks, moved out of state. I stayed, but I never patrolled Eagle Pond again. And so, another strange encounter fades away. A trick of the mind, or something far more unsettling. That's for you to decide. Thank you so much for watching my stories. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support is what keeps this channel going.